Hi all, welcome back to ASP.NET MVC training sessions. So today we will see the ASP.NET MVC page lifecycle. So like when you send a request for the MVC application, how it is going to process and give you the response to the client, and what kind of steps involved in processing this response from web server to the web client. So basically, if you look at this ASP.NET MVC5 page lifecycle, this has some certain series of steps when the request goes to the web server. So we'll list out when any request sends from the end user. First, it goes to HTTP routing. This is the main area where all requests are going to this particular first step, and then it sends to root collection table. This is called router, and then it goes to root handlers, and root handler will send you the identifier handler to the HTTP handlers, and then it will cause the relevant controller. So controller automatically calls the model or view engine based on the requirement which you have defined in the layer. So when you come to this model, in this model area, it again contacts the database if any of the operation relevance to the database queries or database stuff which you are requiring, or if you are looking for the looking for your web request response from database, then it will contact the database. So once you get the view, then here you have a response. So these are the series of steps happening while you send MVC request to the web server. If you look at this architecture diagram, so how it is going to how it is going to appear process steps between these defined steps. If you look at the diagram, so I can say the final diagram will look like this. A request starts here, and it sends request to the HTTP routing. So as I said, MVC uses routing for processing the request, which we are handle using system.web.routing. So as I said, the routing happens here using the namespace system.web.routing, where it is a built-in namespace provided by the MVC framework, MVC architecture, which has all built-in rules which are involved while you processing the request. So once the request comes to the HTTP routing, the routing will take care of this request as per the norms and the rules defined in the system.web.routing namespace. As we have already discussed, MVC requests are handled by URL routing model. So URL routing model is a major one where it involves major role, where it participates or where it occupies major role to process your request. So URL routing model takes a request and look up for a root in the root collection table. So here in this HTTP routing, URL routing model will take your request. It looks for the concerned or relevant root in the root collection table here in the third step. This is the request. First step comes to the HTTP routing. This is the routing model, and it looks for the relevant root in the defined in the root collection table. So after that, it will add roots to the collection. And generally, when we define MVC application, we'll be adding these roots in the root collection, roots get added in the root collection table inside the global.asx file and register roots method, which is called by application underscore start event. If you look at the global.asx file, so we'll be having application underscore start event. In that, we'll be calling the register roots method. So where we'll be adding these roots in this roots collection table. So the roots get added and the application has been requested for the response from the web server. So here it is, and the URL routing model will send that URL details to this particular root collection table, where all the roots get added while you doing a development. So like once you reach here in the router step, it looks for root handlers here. So your request will send it to here based on your root collection. It will send it to root handlers here. So my important thing which I am going to explain you is roots get added to the this the root collection table when application start. So then the request is the creates two kind of objects like underscore underscore root data and request context. So when you look at this HTTP root handlers, it creates two objects for your request. One is underscore root data, which represents the root. It represents the root of your request. It represents the root of a request. And second object is root request context. So this contains the request. So here it contains the root, and here it contains the actual request. So these two objects are going to create when root is going to add to the root collection table when application starts. So MVC controller, the MVC root handler class handles the routing mechanism. So as I explained here, when request comes to here URL routing model, it looks for the relevant root in the root collection table. Root collection table will process the verified and match a root request to the root handler. Root handler is a is a class in the MVC which handles the all roots. It creates an instance of MVC handler and passes a request context to the handler. So what it will do, this root handler, is it will it will create an instance of MVC handler and process the request to the relevant handler, that is HTTP handler. So once the request reaches to the HTTP handler actually calls the controller. So here the main MVC component starts here, controller. So controller, what it will do is it will calls for the relevant execute method. Generally, the controller then uses controller action invoker to determine which action to be run. So when the root handler sends the request to the HTTP handler will calls the MVC root handler. It creates instance of an MVC handler and pass the request context to the root controller. Control will be invoking the determine or the relevant action method to be run. So from here onwards, again the process is very similar, which we discussed in the architecture of this MVC. So controller will look for any logics defined in the business logic is defined which relevant to the database. Then it look for model. Model will look for the relevant database here. So if anything is expecting or requiring from the database side, it looks for database existence, and then it connects to the database and it will get the required stuff from the database, and it will send the response to the controller again. Control will send the response to the view engine here. So this is one more important point we need to discuss here. So once you get the relevant stuff from the controller after processing of your business logic and database activities, it will send the response to the view engine. It depends on your the version of MVC you are using it. If you are using in 2.0, 3.0, so that's still using web form engine, and when you're using MVC, 3.0 above, so there you will be having an Azure engine. So there are different engines we have in MVC history, like so starting they have been given the C web form engine, ASP.NET web form engine, and then they were they changed it to Azure engine. Okay, once your response reaches to the view engine will send you the response to the view. This is where the final step we have in MVC. So here you will displaying the response here to the end user. So this is what the step involved in this, the MVC page life cycle. So my overall flow about this MVC page life cycle is MVC request will send it to HTTP routing. This is a routing model, URL routing model. It receives the request and it sends to the router. This is the collection table where we are having all routes for our request. So generally we'll be defining all the routes in the global.asx file when we are developing an application, like what kind of routing patterns you want and what kind of routes you want to define it. Everything will be defining here. That's the reason this is sending to this is sending to the router collection here. This will look for the relevant route and it will send it to the route handler. So where the MVC route handler will be created here, and it will send the request context to the HTTP handler. HTTP handler again calls for the controller, MVC controller action method here, and it will look for the proper relevant execution method, and it will execute the determined action, and it will pass to the view engine if it is not required any modal presence, and then view engine will send response to the view. So this is overall the the flow happening in MVC request. So I hope this clears the MVC request page lifecycle. Thank you.